Good morning again. We're talking about this cycle of loving your neighbors, getting into the lives of our neighbors. There are so many people hurting around us, and I'll talk a little bit more about that today, but there's just pain all around us. People who are suffering, who are grieving, who are dealing with various traumas. I always say you don't have to look far to find people who are hurting. Loving on our neighbors, moving them to loving God, getting them here, getting them to worship God. Just this morning I saw a Facebook post, and somebody said, hey, I'm kind of looking for a church, and this was local here in this town. I'm looking for a church. My kids, admittedly, we're not churchgoers, but my kids expressed that they want to start going to church. Where do I look? And just instantly, boom, all these people, just all kinds of comments were saying, come here because of this, and our church has this program, and our church, and I thought, this is this cycle working, getting people to worship. They're out there, they're seeking. And it was interesting reading the comments of all the other people who said, I'm in the same boat. We're looking and we don't feel right that we're not going to church anywhere. And people are really wrestling with this. Where do we go? How do we get connected to God? And if Christians aren't there to connect people to God, it's likely not going to happen. Getting people to loving God and then moving them to serving others. The Campbells are with us online this morning. We did a camp there in 2019. We're at least thinking about going back and kind of thinking about plans to go back and to serve people in Ecuador. But we can serve people everywhere we go. I just got a long message yesterday from our good friend in Haiti, Julian. He wanted me to express his thanks, and he said, 1,000,000 thanks could never express how much I'm grateful for all the help that you all have given me. Our money that we send, and he said more money means more people being helped through God. I thought that's a really cool way to put that. Serving others, rolling up our sleeves and getting into the lives of other people by serving them and repeating that cycle. And then those people love their neighbors, and those people get people to love God. And this cycle continues. This is a non-stop cycle once it starts. Our theme this year is God first. Our theme verse comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7. You shall teach them, that is the commandments, to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. We need to do better about talking about God in our lives and living out the commandments. Kind of the way the quarters are going to work this year. This quarter we're talking about God and you. So this is, how do you strengthen your relationship with God? And this isn't just for us adults. This is all of us, from the youngest kids all the way to our oldest members. How do you connect with God and fall in love with God more? It's so important. And if we are not loving God, and if we're not loving God fully, it's impossible to teach our children. It just doesn't become a priority. And if we're not teaching God in our homes, I can guarantee you we're not teaching God at work, and we're not teaching God beyond. That's just a fact. And so as we talk about God and us, today it's kind of a strange thing maybe, but we're talking about physical health, taking care of yourself physically. If we're not well physically, scientists know that there's a direct link between gut health and the brain. There are all kinds of nerves that link the gut and the brain. If our gut's not right, our brain's not right. You're in a fog, you feel gross, you feel lethargic, you feel like your heart beat out of your chest at night. If you're like me, sometimes when you're stressed out, you lay down on your pillow at night and you can hear your dumb heartbeat in your ear against the pillow. Doesn't that drive you nuts? Or am I the only one who has that kind of bad health and stress, right? It's terrible. God doesn't want us to be living like a fish outside of a fishbowl. Do you ever see a fish jump out of the water gasping for air? It's painful to watch, isn't it? Unless you like to torture animals, it's kind of painful to watch a fish gasping for air. We're not meant to live life that way. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves physically, we're not going to be taking care of ourselves spiritually and mentally and emotionally. And I'm kind of preaching this, I guess, as part of a confession too. I need to live by these same rules. The scripture that Chase read for us this morning came from 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. This is John's greeting, and he says this: to the elder, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health, as it goes well with your soul. I don't really like this translation. It's a little bit clunky. But this word for good health means good physical and mental health. I hope that physically and mentally that you're being healthy as it goes well with your soul. This is kind of a direct link, that it's going well with your soul. In other words, he's saying your good health will lead to a healthy soul. I wish it was translated better than this, but it's a little bit clunky. Verse 3, for I rejoice greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear my children are walking in the truth. And then Paul writes this to Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands, nor take part in the sins of others, but keep yourself pure. No longer drink only water, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomach and your frequent ailments. Do you think Paul is happy with Timothy's lack of good health? And probably the stomach issues, quite frankly, had to do with stress. Timothy was in Ephesus. We know that in Ephesus things were kind of chaotic. That's where the riots happened. Paul was chased out of Ephesus. Timothy's there in Ephesus, and things were tough. Things were really, really tough. And so Paul's saying, take care of your physical health, Timothy. There's an interesting article that I found, an interesting title. It's a little bit, I guess, clickbait, but it's a study that was out of Baylor University, a really recent study out of Baylor University, and the title is Portly Pastors Widespread, but Sabbaticals and Peer Support Can Help Fight Fat, Baylor study finds. Again, a little bit of a clickbait title, but this is what's interesting. Reading from the article, it says more than a third of American clergy members are obese. That's not overweight, obese. With stress, longer hours, being underpaid, and lack of self-care among the reasons, according to Baylor University study. Isn't that interesting? And sad? By interesting, I mean sad. There's an obesity problem among ministers because of stress, because of long hours, lack of compensation, lack of self-care, caring for others and not caring for yourself. And it's interesting, Paul didn't tell Timothy, hey, you put others first and you take care of people and you run yourself into the ground because that's going to put a badge of honor on you as a Christian. He doesn't say that. Paul says, take care of yourself, Timothy. John says, I want you to take care of your health so that it may go well with your soul. The study goes on, the Baylor University study. I'm going to skip around a little bit, but I thought these points were interesting. Researchers used a quote-unquote distress index, assessing clergy members' stress levels by asking how often in the past year they had too many demands made on them by congregation members, experienced stress because of dealing with critical congregants, felt lonely and isolated in their work, experienced stress because of the challenges they faced in their congregation, worked more than 46 hours per week. So that was kind of the criteria behind the study. And what they found is that most people in ministry are overworked and overstressed out, and their health suffers because of it. I can say personally that this is important not just for our own health and our own mental health and our own souls and all that stuff, but it's important for our children to have us present. And I can say, and Mom's here today, we just talked about this week. This past week was what would have been Mike's 50th birthday. And I called Mom the morning of Mike's, what would have been his 50th birthday. And one of the things that Mom said is, I wonder what Mike would look like today. We'll never know. Mike died of a sudden heart attack. That was back in 2015. And the sad part of the story, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been very, very public, my sister-in-law Ashley did not fare well. And because she did not fare well, her kids did not fare well. She became extremely addicted to alcohol and prescription medications. She was in and out of rehab, over the course of the last several years, and now has been how many months clean now? So a little over a year clean now. She will always struggle with addiction. And so taking care of ourselves physically, or the lack thereof, they have either a detrimental effect on our kids and our entire family, and we're talking generational. Because it's not just the addictions and trying to deal with the grief and trying to overcome that, but it's also what it does to your belief in God. And when you don't have a strong parent, and we can tell you this as a fact, when you don't have a strong parent spiritually, the kids suffer spiritually big time. Our physical health is directly linked to our spiritual health, period. I could tell you story after story after story. In fact, Mom and I was just sharing stories this week. We're working on a course together that we're going to create to help people move from a place of being stuck in their grief to feeling hopeful and becoming productive members of society again. There are so many people crippled by grief. And, Mom and I were talking, and I said, when I drive around town, there's not a graveyard that I drive past where I can't point to and say, I have buried multiple people there. I remember one that's just above our house, one graveyard. I was doing a funeral for Jason Zimmerman. If you remember, that was a horrific death. And to my surprise, when I was standing at the casket at the gravesite, 3 graves down was little baby Hunter Mills, whom I had stood at his grave and buried a 3-month-old baby. Over and over and over, people are experiencing this great trauma from losing people. In our congregation, 2 losses in less than 2 weeks, just this past week. Grief is heavy. Grief is terrible. It increases our stress. If we're not well physically, we cannot be well spiritually. I want to show you, this is a little bit funny, but it's not. And I wanted to show you kind of where we're at as a society. That people don't take health seriously, and we mock it. And have you guys heard of Heart Attack Grill? It's Heart Attack Grill they're known for their heart attack burgers. I've been there. You've been there? TP. I hope you repent. In Vegas? Yeah. So there's one in Vegas and there's one somewhere else. You got to hear this. This is crazy. So this is their octuplet. What do they call it? The octuplet burger or something like that. I'll read. This is directly from Wikipedia. I thought this was satire when I was reading this. This isn't satire. This is from Wikipedia. This is a for real article. I don't want to leave this gross picture up, so we'll go back to the nice, pretty scripture that's black and white. Heart Attack Grill. There's one in Las Vegas. Apparently, some of our members have been there. And then there's one, I think, in formerly located in Chandler, Arizona. So this might be the only one. They had a couple locations, but they keep closing down for some odd reason. The menu is generally themed around its items that are exceptionally high in calories and fat. It includes single, double, triple, quadruple, and all the way up to octuple bypass hamburgers, ranging from 8 to 64 ounces of beef, with the octuple bypass burger containing approximately 16,000 kilocalories. Has anybody, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of a kilocalorie? Anybody? I never had heard of a kilocalorie. You know what's a kilocalorie? Do you know? What's that? It is not the same thing as a calorie. 1 kilocalorie is equivalent to 1,000 calories. 16,000 kilocalorie burger is a 16 million calorie burger. No joke. Customers over 350 pounds in weight eat for free if they weigh themselves on a scale before eating. It gets better. The Heart Attack Grill was founded in 2005 in Temple, Arizona by John Basso with the declared intent of serving quote-unquote nutritional pornography. Food so bad for you it's shocking. Illnesses and deaths. The restaurant's spokesman, 575-pound Blair River, died on March 1, 2011, aged 29, from complications of pneumonia. On February 11, 2012, a customer suffered what was reported to be an apparent heart attack while eating a triple bypass burger at the restaurant. Restaurant owner John Basso called 911, and the customer was taken to the hospital. Reportedly, patrons thought it was a stunt and started taking photos. The guy's laying on the ground of a heart attack, and people are snapping pictures, laughing. Imagine the trauma people are unpacking after that, you know what I mean? Like they think it's a joke, they think it's a stunt, then they find out the dude had a real heart attack. And it's traumatic. On April 12, 2012, a woman fell unconscious. I seriously thought this was a satire. It's not. On April 21st, 2012, a woman fell unconscious while eating a double bypass burger, drinking alcohol, and smoking. Yeah, you don't say. You know what I mean? So I use that as an example to say, and I know that's an extreme example, but generally speaking, people aren't taking care of themselves. I can tell you in ministry, I talk to minister friends all over the place they're overweight, they're tired, they're not sleeping well. I have so many friends in ministry who have had heart attacks. Some of them have not made it. If we're not taking care of ourselves physically, we can't be taking care of ourselves spiritually. And so my plea to you and to myself is to get healthier in 2023. And my prayer is the same as John's for Gaius. He says, I pray that you may be in good health so that it goes well for your soul. I think is a better translation. And then Timothy, Paul writing to Timothy, no longer drink only water, but use a little wine. I'm not telling you to go out drinking. This was a common fix for stomach issues. They didn't have Pepto-Bismol. And so this is kind of the equivalent of Pepto. Take care of your stomach and your frequent ailments, Timothy. Take care of yourself. Jesus often withdrew. He rested. He connected with God. He prayed. He meditated. Jesus took care of his own health too. Jesus knew when it was time to pull away from the crowds and to quit and to work on his own connection with God. We've got to work on our connection with God, and we've got to be well physically so that we can be well spiritually. Do you find it ironic that this sermon is on a day of a potluck? I didn't plan that. I didn't plan it that way, but it was funny. We were walking out the door, and Natalie said, Jimmy, it's a day of a potluck. Be careful. Because I tend to gorge on food, so I know all eyes are going to be on me today. I'm going to take it easy today. the message is yours. Let's work this year, especially in this first quarter. Let's work on our relationship with God. It's not just about sitting down with the Bible and reading scriptures. We've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to. Let's take care of ourselves, and then the rest of the year, and even starting now, we're going to work on our relationship with God, with our family, in the workplace, and beyond. The message is yours. If there's anybody this morning who has a prayer need or has not yet taken the step to put Christ on in baptism, we'd invite you to come up. We're going to stand as Jared leads us in this song. Not that song, this song.
Faithful love flowing down from the